Thank you for being here again for another episode of the Business of Fun podcast. I am your host, Dave Wakeman. I've got two guests today. Same time. Totally unusual, but totally worth it. Great conversation with David Hornby, the Managing Director of Northern Europe, the UK and Ireland for Secutix, and his colleague in North America, Michael McDermott, the General Manager of the Americas. This conversation is great. It probably could be 2 or 3 podcast episodes, but we're going to load it all into one. We're going to overwhelm you with new ideas and new information today. And this was born out of a visit I had with David while I was in London a few weeks ago, where we had a conversation for the Secutix internal education platform. I did a little mini webinar, or I guess it would be a full-blown webinar with David, and David said, well, let me return the favor and come on the Business of Fun. So that's where this started, but we went all over the place. It's great. Hey, thanks for listening again to the Business of Fun podcast. I am your host, Dave Wakeman. My guests today, both from Secutix, there's 2 of them. Totally unique for me. David Hornby, he's the Managing Director of Northern Europe, the UK, and Ireland for Secutix. And then Michael McDermott, who's the General Manager of the Americas, and lives in my old hometown of Fort Lauderdale. We had a really, really great conversation, probably enough to do 2 or 3 episodes on. I'll get into that in a moment. But before I do, just a second, I have been sending out emails, probably about 10 to 15 a day for the last couple months. Just checking in with people, asking you what I can do to make the newsletter and podcast more valuable, more effective, more helpful for you. Working through the Talking Tickets newsletter email list and the Business of Value newsletter list, and asking a similar question. A couple common themes have been coming back. Number one is how to make sure we're on the right direction. Another consistent question has been about pricing and how to get your pricing right. How to make products, so like how do you package up your products in the right way to make sales easier? That's another one. Launching season tickets, individual ticket packages, just ticket packages, or just products in general is another one. And then, reinvigorating or getting momentum back for your sales team. Those have been kind of the 5 big ones. But I'd be curious because there's a lot of overlap between the newsletter and the podcast. But what are you thinking about? So send me an email and let me know at dave@davewakeman.com. If you visit my website, davewakeman.com, I put together a really different virtual workshop series that covers all 5 of those topics. But I'm curious because I'm trying to make sure that the newsletter and the podcast are valuable to you. So check that out, davewakeman.com. Look in the shop. There's a whole bunch of things built around those things that I've been putting together. I'll continue to update it. But send me your notes at dave@davewakeman.com and let me know what you're focused on. Those are the current 5 big topics, but I'm sure they'll change as I get more and more feedback. Back to David and Michael. So like I said at the start, the genesis of this conversation came from a conversation I had with David when I was in London. I did a webinar for Secutix team and customers that will rest on their internal education platform. And we talked about all kinds of things like data and the state of tickets in the United States, all kinds of things. But David said, well, why don't we get together and do one for the Business of Fun? And I thought that would be great. And actually the podcast turned out much better than I even hoped for. So we talked about opportunities. We talked about what success looks like for people. We talked about, Michael's background coming from a tech product side, and David's coming from hospitality. There's a really great case study for Guinness in here, which is probably a very popular brand with the listeners of the Business of Fun. We talked about the maintaining a brand experience. We talked about knowing the customers. We talked about using technology as a tool to bring you closer to your customers and not just to facilitate transactions. We talked about the difference between being, the what you need as a customer versus as a business leader from your technology. We talked about having a direct connection. We talked about being respectful to your customers. We talked about stagnation, not so much stagnation, but just industry maybe not always embracing change. We talked about the secondary market. We talked about, there's another Justin Bieber example in here. We talked about brand management. We talked about being fan-centric. We talked about just a ton of stuff. This is one goes a little bit long. I debated turning it into 2 podcasts, but I thought we would just stick with one here. But it's great. And I can't wait for you to listen to my conversation with Michael and David on the Business of Fun podcast. All right. So today I have a special treat for you. This is super special because I have David Hornby and Michael McDermott from Secutix here. Not one, but both. And this is sort of payback for David having me in the Secutix office in London and putting me on the spot. So I said, well, look, it's only fair if I put David on the spot. But he was afraid to do it on his own, so he had Michael come in to help him. So I want to welcome you both to the Business Fun. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, no, this is going to be fun. David and I had a great time doing a webinar for the Secutix internal learning system. So I wanted to invite David back to do this. And he's like, oh, would you like to have Michael talk about this as well? Because it's great because now we have a European and an American mindset. And there's like a little bit of tension between those two that I think should make for a really interesting conversation for people. So to lead off, though, a question that Michael asked me as we were preparing it was what do I see as the role of technology in the world of tickets right now? And so I want to turn the question around to both of you because Secutix is a tech company. Tell me a little bit about what technology in ticketing right now and into the future looks like, from what can people accomplish or to what it means for the people you're working with.
All right, I'll take a first stab at it since I'm the newbie compared to David, and maybe bring a technology perspective to it. So from the conversations over a career that's almost 30 years, I can't believe I'm saying that, technology is only an enabler, right? And so technology continues to evolve and change. And what I see Secutix doing extremely well is having a startup mentality and a pioneer mentality and looking at technologies across the entire spectrum and look at them in a respectful way for our world, which is how do we get fans into stadiums or arenas to experience the things they want to experience, and how do we enable those that are providing that content ways, tools, and technologies to do it in a way that creates the most efficient and effective way to bring real fans into those things that they want to see. And as I jumped into the company 18 months ago, I was able to really see 3 main things from a technology perspective. And I don't know if it's a Swiss mentality, where we're headquartered, but having an open platform where we can connect to lots of technologies in an extremely easy and open way. And I think when you build a platform with that, especially in the world that we're dealing with technology and ticketing, there's a lot of systems that have to connect departments and operations. And so having that technology hub that can connect to CRM systems or ticketing insurance packages or bot protection or all these things that are being innovated around and with us, it really creates a new way for people to have levers to control the business the way they want to in a very complex ecosystem. 2 is, how do we leverage technology to ensure that control of the important things are in place. So it's how do I use technology to create a simple way for fans to go online, find the ticket, buy the ticket they want, and ensure that's the ticket they have in their digital wallet, so that when they show up to the event, it's theirs, and it's working through all the technologies that it has to get through to get into the arena or the stadium. And having that control lever is really important to really build that credibility with a fan base and ensure that you establish a relationship directly with them that is, creating value, not just for that one time, but for a lifetime. And then third is, if you use technology the right way, it gives you freedom. It shouldn't be restrictive, and that freedom comes from having a platform that doesn't just do it one way, but it does it several ways. And so the ability to say, I want to have sales or distribution not just direct to a fan in a website, but I want to leverage valued brokers, and I know that there's going to be a secondary market. So how do I put all the controls and packages and pricing and promotions across all those sales channels with a single set of inventory to fans that buy in different ways? And I think that's the way I've seen our world view on technology directly connect with at least the organizations I'm speaking to here in the US, and the success that I know. I'll let David finish this up, because he's living the real world other side of it, with successes of amazing organizations that are using our technology in scale beyond any of our wildest imagination.
David, he set you up.
He did, didn't he? Thanks, Michael. I think so. Yeah, Michael has a strong and a long background in terms of technology. My background is nothing to do really with technology. I come from a more of a people business, in the sense that I worked in the world of hotels and hospitality. That was my degree in hotel and catering back in the late 80s. So building teams that deliver service and solutions for customers, and meeting their expectations, ultimately, in terms of what they expect when they walk through the door, whether that be a restaurant or a hotel. And I think when we're working with clients and we're selling technology, we're also selling the chance to change that experience and improve the experience for their customers. And as a business, I think one of the changes that we've definitely seen in Secutix over the past 6 or 7 years is not just becoming an engineering and software business, but becoming a customer-centric and client-centric business. So focusing on the fan. If we get it right for the fan, we get it right for our clients. If we get it right from our clients, they'll talk about us and they'll promote us. They'll build case studies with us, and we can then grow our business. And fundamentally, that client-centric and fan-centric approach, to me, is a key change in our business, coming from an engineering and a software DNA. And I think if we keep focusing on that, and we keep focusing on making it better for the end fan, and making things easier to manage processes themselves, to feel like they're in control of their own kind of destiny and can make changes and do things for themselves, and we enable that self-management, because people don't necessarily want to talk to someone all the time anymore. They want to do that when they really want to do it. But you know what? Even buying a $10,000-$15,000 experience, they want to just be able to go online and just book it. Yeah. And it's amazing what we've seen in the past 5 or 6 years with the move to hospitality online, when historically it's been a sales force picking up phones and dialing for dollars, selling these kind of experiences. And this just isn't the case anymore, because corporates aren't buying those. And also, individuals don't necessarily want to go through the same kind of process as people have done in the past. So I think, our customers have used technology in the way that Michael's alluded to change the experience that their clients, their fans are wanting to. And just one great example from an amazing brand that everyone will have heard of. and not in the sports space, because we can come on to that. I'm sure we'll talk a bit about sports. But, you know, we work with a company called Diageo. Diageo is one of the largest drinks businesses in the world, with some incredibly well-known brands. And one of those brands is the Guinness brand. Do you know, Guinness is very linked to the island of Ireland. It's the Irish brand as a culture. There's an Irish bar in every city in every world, and in the US, I can name 2 or 3 cities where it's well celebrated on Paddy's Day in March. But I think when you're looking at a brand experience, which is in the world of advertising and marketing today, the ability for brands like Guinness to market and sell themselves is being restricted by the very nature of what they sell. And yes, their products are changing. There's now a Guinness Zero as a product, but fundamentally, it's a very strong brand that has great brand recognition. So their main Guinness experience in Dublin is their original brewery. It's the brewery of Guinness, the product. And a great stat, half the people that visit Ireland, 50% of people that visit Ireland go and visit the Guinness Storehouse. So it's about just under 2 million visitors a year internationally that visit the Guinness Storehouse. And on busy days, that's 12 to 15,000 people a day. And in the past, before moving to Secutix, they were limited to how that customer would be able to access the ticket, access the ability to change a ticket. Obviously, you don't just do 10, 15,000 people a day all through the door at 9 o'clock. You need to have a timed process. But more importantly, not just a timed process, people need to be able to come online and change a time because their day changes. They can change a time slot. They can move it around. They can change the person that's attending from a child to an adult ticket and pay the difference. Self-management of these processes takes away the need for them to wait for a phone or customer call center to answer the phone. It reduces the need for Guinness to manage complicated processes by using call centers. And ultimately as well, that inventory of availability of so many slots per day and so many individuals in each slot, the impact of a venue like that with the third parties, so people that are providing the customer base to the Guinness Storehouse, so traditional tour operators, OTAs, etc., because they didn't have a direct connection, and to Michael's point around this open platform, the ability to connect, because there wasn't a way to connect the two technologies together, that was impacting their productivity and their ability to monetize and leverage their available space. So they would have to keep open, of the 10,000, let's say, inventory spots they had a day to be able to go through the experience. They would have to hold back 3,000 or 4,000 a day just because they didn't know when some of those groups were going to arrive, because they weren't necessarily using the same processes to book specific time spots. So the ability to then reduce the number of OTAs, work with key partners, really create a platform where they were using our technology to manage better inventory management and time management, meant that now they know when those groups are coming, what groups are arriving when, exactly which time slot they're going to align to. They know the people who are walking through the door, and they can communicate with them on the way into the business and then throughout the experience and then post the event in terms of technology and their data. And that's a fundamental change to the way that the Guinness manages its business. The guy that runs the experience, one of the senior leadership team there, said the Guinness Storehouse was the best first date that you never talk to again, because everyone came through the door, everyone had a great time, but you never heard from them again. And it was like a first date. And actually all they wanted to do was move away from being a first date to a marriage, and from a marriage into a long-term, endearing relationship with a brand fundamentally that most of the people who went there not only were curious about but loved after their third pint. So
and so the dirty little secret is it's actually David Michael Patrick McDermott Jr. So this story just resonates deep inside of me as a consumer as well. But Dave, the thing that is fascinating to me as I hear you tell that story through the halls, is two things. One is, I think the world is changing in the way that we as human beings want to interact with brands, right? And having that direct brand relationship is
Yeah.
something that I think we do extremely well. And what I love about what the Guinness story tells us is we provided them a technology where they could provide a very unique customer journey with our technology, not just a website to buy a ticket at a time, right? But a journey that said, here's what I want out of my experience, and lead them down the path to the promised land of, I'm so excited to show up for this first date. I'm actually going to brush my teeth and comb my hair when I get there so that I look good. And that to me is, Dave, why I think technology creates this new ability to connect and create a unique experience. The second part that I think is fascinating, and I'm seeing this hardcore in the US, and it's a hypothesis I have, and that is social media created a new way of a consumer to brand relationship. And I'm seeing this in spades with some of the things that are happening here, which is when your brand, your social index is at a high enough level, you're a magnetic force to fans, independent of marketing and distribution platforms. You already have an engaged set of fans that want to engage and participate with you. So now it's, how do I connect that without bringing people in the middle to erode my brand and my story and quite frankly, my revenue, if I'm looking at this from a Guinness brand story perspective. And I think that's where I'm seeing the sands shift in the ticketing industry. And for those that are looking for the new way, I really think it's going to be around, is my brand index high enough for my brand to drive that direct relationship and really convert it into something powerful.
I think that's a good point, because there's this as somebody who teaches brand management for entertainment, the lesson I try to teach people is that if you're in sports and entertainment, or if you're Guinness, right, you're in a unique position because people actually care about your brand. And so like what Michael's saying here, it does ring true, because if you're Guinness, right, people care, right? They have an attachment to that. The same way like Apple, has that connection, and all of your sports teams do. And so the important thing to me, which I think, and I'm going to ask both of you about this, because it is important to control that relationship, because most of the time what you have is, if you insert somebody in the middle, their foundation of understanding the brand, the customer relationship, the brand, the fan relationship is more of, I'm using a Pilot pen here, is more of that thing, and nobody cares. I like the Pilot pen because it writes smoothly, but I also, David has a pen that he's writing with that I use, a similar brand as well. And the important thing for what you're talking about here is that if you come to it with the mindset of like you're selling Pilot pens, and you're Wimbledon or your FIFA or your Guinness, then that's going to create a disconnect between you and your customers, which is, to Michael's point, going to hurt your relationship. It's going to hurt your revenue, and it's going to create a distance. So the question I have for you, both of you, is when you have this conversation with your partners, how do you start it? Because one of the things that comes back to me is like, I'm trying to teach you like you're a first year marketing student. And the reason I do it is because most people don't understand that. Like, they don't have as sophisticated a take on the relationship as you both have just laid out. So how do you talk to people who maybe aren't as well versed in that point of view about the importance of this relationship, or the people just inherently get that, and so then you're able to take the technology and just highlight the way that the technology improves that relationship? Which way does that go?
and I'll maybe put it. It starts around control. Like, how important is control for you as an organization? And I think there's two segments. There's those that feel they're in control, and those that feel like they want better control. And how I take the conversation is, I try to put them back into being a consumer of the world they operate in, as opposed to a business leader of a brand. And for me, the analogy is Amazon, right? Amazon is an incredible marketplace. It's not going anywhere, right? You can find and buy anything you want. Now, do you build a relationship with that brand? No, it's a transaction, and that's what these distribution platforms are designed for. It's for transactions at mass, and I think those will always be there. But I think the control factor is, well, how much of my brand or my product do I want to put on a faceless transaction engine, as opposed to having a direct relationship where I can engage in deeper conversations. And then when I flip that around and go, would you rather buy your, most prized possession, whatever that is, whether it's shoes or jewelry or watches or pens, on a transaction system, or with the brand itself, where maybe you can get some personalization on it? And my 19-year-old daughter's an absolute sneakerhead, and she loves to go directly to the shoe manufacturer, where you can go on and you can say, not only do I want the Samba, but I want the blue stripes, and I want to add a different colored gummy sole, and I want to put a stamp on it, and it's now my Samba shoe. It's not the one I can buy on Amazon like everyone else with the 3 black stripes, right? And I think as we see this generational change of personalization has become super relevant, I think that's translating into the ticketing industry, where people want experiences, and they want to have packages, and they want to have products that are designed for them. And that, quite frankly, really isn't the role of a distribution platform like, and I'll keep pointing to Amazon. It can happen, but it's not the same as if I'm having that one-to-one relationship. And I think that's really how those conversations are happening for me in the US. And David, I don't know what you've done over there to be so successful, because you've got the greatest brands on the planet Earth running on our platform.
I think in terms of how do you start the conversation, I think there's an inherent, are the right people in the room for you to have that conversation? And if they're not, then, start the meeting again and get the right people in the room. Because predominantly, and this is going to sound slightly incendiary, there aren't many ticketing managers that want to change their ticketing system.
That's true.
It's true, because it's like a heart bypass or even a heart replacement process. It's something that not many of them want to go through in their career too many times, because if they've been through it once already, or they've heard about it, it's not the easiest process to replace the ticketing system. So, but the people that want to see change happen and get the change requirement is the people that are ultimately in charge of the relationship with the customer and the fan. And they're either delivering or responsible for that fan experience, the fan feedback on that experience, or the revenue that comes from that fan experience. So the commercial and marketing teams. So if the commercial and marketing leadership are not involved in the process, I don't think you start on the right foot. And so that's why I think that the best conversations we've had are when the commercial and the marketing team, along with other parts of the business, have come together to recognize change is what they're looking for. And they've defined that even simply in the sense of some clear objectives. They don't need to be overly long objectives. They don't need to be thousands of them. Just 2 or 3 clear objectives around updating, changing, and improving the fan experience and the revenue that comes from that fan experience. So I think that's important. So most of the good conversations we've had and the clear change has come from making sure that those people are in the room, and we recognize that processes when they're not, can be sometimes a price comparison, if I'm
Mhm.
honest.
Yep. And you've already lost if it's a price comparison.
Yeah,
you already know that. Yeah,
we have, because we're not cheap. We are an enterprise platform and we provide value, but we're not about driving it down to the bottom of the value chain. We know the value of what we deliver, and we want to make sure we get paid to do that, and we can deliver value back in terms of revenue growth, etc. So I'll give you an example where that's been the case, and this direct connection to fans is really important. We've been working now since 2017, the Open at Royal Birkdale with the RNA, and we now work with the RNA across all of their products, including the Women's Open, not just the Men's Open. The Open happened last week at Royal Troon, and they've become a bit of a dolphin in terms of technology. When we started, all of their ticketing was done on a distribution platform. The product was there and available. It was literally a transaction website, because the RNA didn't really want to manage that process, and didn't see the value of it. And then a new leadership team came in, and a new commercial and marketing team got hold of the product, in effect, and said, you know what, we want a relationship with those fans. It's really important. We change venue every year. That means we have to build our audience to change venue every year. We're not at the same place, which is a challenge in terms of marketing. So we need a wide and good understanding of our audience. Secondly, we also need to not keep giving the ability for people to just come up and walk in every day and join a queue. That's a really bad fan experience. And also it means that we don't know who's going to turn up. Therefore, we can't forecast and manage and provide the right experiences. So ideally, we know that we know intuitively that there's a high demand, but actually we're only seeing that demand happen in the last 36, 48 hours before the event. So it's very hard to manage events when that's happening.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do a world project like a major, you genuinely need to probably have a good, clear understanding of who's your fan base, who is likely to come to an event that happens on the South Coast or that happens in St Andrews, and how to talk to those people earlier and get them to commit earlier to making a decision to attend. And I think the RNA recognised that they couldn't do that with a distribution platform. And I think that the understanding of that, and then the process and the evolution of this journey that they have been on, means that they've not tried to kill everything immediately. They've not tried to do everything all at once, and they've segmented that down to getting the product right, getting the pricing right, getting the processes right. And then now it's about tweaking. It's about how do we do a ballot even better? When does the ballot go on sale? Who does that go to? They've created a club you can join that has priority access for that club. It's called the One Club, and that now has its own TV channel, its own content that it's been created. So they've created a product all around that membership process, which means that you get access to priority tickets. So they've done many things, but I think fundamentally the journey that they've been around ticketing is part of an overall journey of connecting with their fans directly to understand better, not just the events that they want them to attend, but the things about the sport and the journey that they're on in terms of improving that sport and changing that sport, which is golf.
Yeah,
I think David just validated my entire process. So I'm just going to clip that part and just say, David Hornby said it was great, so it's great, because it's true. It's like you have to know what you're trying to achieve. You have to know who you're trying to reach.
Yeah.
You have to know what they want, and then you have to figure out like what actions you're going to take. I mean, that's pretty much like it's so basic, but it's so true. And then I stepped on Michael because Michael had a point he wanted to make. So
no, it's fascinating, right? Because if you think about it, there's two things. One is mindset, right? And David, you're spot on. Are you talking to the right people? And what I've learned in my journey here is talking to the CEO of a very well-known stadium that supports, NFL organizations. I don't want to change. I'm at a point in my career where I don't want change. And it's like the old adage, you don't get fired for buying IBM. I think that sticks in the minds of some of the buyers and the ticketing and the mentality of those that are in the industry that exists. And on the other side, I have innovators who are looking for new ways. And the CEO of Washington Pavilion, which is now 3E Encore, came into a performing arts center museum and has brought a new mentality to the organization. And they're using our technology to not just run the museum, but run the theater. He's now expanding into a tennis tournament, a festival, and creating a bunch of value for his fans because he got to know his fans and not share them with someone else to go target them away to go do something else. And it's fascinating because he's like, I now have a tool to know who my customer is and then provide them with the things that they want because I know what they want because I've built that relationship. And I think that's fascinating. And the second example here is just here in the US was we just finished up the T20 Cricket World Cup. And cricket being brand new kind of sport in the US, we were trying to figure out, with our client, how do you go back to some of the fundamentals of the 4 Ps of marketing, Dave, right? And do you have the ability to do and execute on the 4 Ps? And the answer is yes. If you really look at what we do with our technology, it gives you the ability to understand there's multiple dimensions of a fan and a buyer experience. And so enable to our customers to package, price, and promote, and put them in the right place, right? With a single tool, with a single set of inventory that you can manipulate to hit those dimensions of a fan and their buying desires is super powerful, right? We had very little time to set up the tournament. And by all means, from a sales and getting people in the matches that were there, the super high demand ones to the no one cared about them matches, and being able to use our tool to fill the seats across all those different dimensions was a huge success. And I'm so proud of our company because it wasn't just the technology. To David's point, it was the mindset of the leadership that was running the tournament and how to leverage the tool and the people they brought in to really support that. And so for me, it's I get so excited about this because I feel the winds of change are happening, and it's I think this is going to be a fascinating journey to see what the story is in 3 years.
Yeah, I think change is coming because of 2 things, which is like in Europe, we're seeing a lot of laws and regulations are trying to make ticketing fairer. And then in the U.S., we have the antitrust investigation and the antitrust actions against Live Nation. I think those are, if you take those 2 things and then you combine it with some of the structural changes that are happening along streaming, there's an antitrust case that just happened against the NFL Sunday Pass. That brings into the question whether or not the leagues and the teams can bundle their rights and whether or not everybody's kind of compete against each other for rights. And it would create an environment, I think, for real change in the way people have to address their fans, and they have to understand their fans a lot better. But before, which is something I want to come back to in just a second, but one thing that throughout this conversation that has stuck with me was, number one, is the focus on the fans, on the customers. But then Michael brought up this idea too of transaction-based customers. And one of the things that we were talking about before we started recording was about the nature of the secondary market. And to me, when you start talking about these transactional things and the importance of understanding and controlling the customer relationship, and then I think about the secondary market and how the secondary market, especially in the U.S., has made everything a transaction, and it's kind of fractured that relationship. There's this huge difference between the way the secondary market operates in the U.S. versus in Europe and the rest of the world. is that something that when you're having the conversations, this is both of you, that you bring up with as far as like the nature of the secondary market, or how the secondary market is operating now? Because I'm curious, because a lot of people that listen to this are going to be from the secondary market, and and their point of view usually is that like we bought it and we can go YOLO with it, and I find it to be destructive.
Yeah, I'll answer from a U.S. perspective. I have to live in it because it is an industry in and of itself, and I'm a believer of follow the money, right? And money is being created in mass in the secondary market. So it's not that you can just make it go away. That's saying, resell of anything, cars or whatever, it can go away. It's how do you put transparency and an ability to put a process in place that shows that the right people are going through the right ways of purchasing inventory and tickets and selling them to fans. Because even as a consumer, right, I have an example that real recently where a couple backed out of going to an event with us, and so I had to resell 2 tickets, right? And it's not that I'm out there bought and trying to buy thousands of them and resell them, for exorbitant rates. It's I had a real business challenge as a fan that I needed to solve. And I think you just have to be respectful of the secondary market and look at them as partners, right? And if you look at them as partners as opposed to enemies, and you create ways to create and use technology to show that the right people are buying them in the right way and distributing and reselling them in the right way, then we can coexist. It's when it goes completely rogue and in a way that's trying to manipulate a market, that's where it gets in trouble. And what I love about what we're doing here at Secutix is we have the technology to have that visibility of the chain of custody throughout that ticket's life cycle. And we use technology in different ways that I don't believe anyone else is to be able to achieve this. And so when you have that, we have the ability to see, using technology like AI, to see patterns and behaviors in data that says, hey, this is an unusual pattern, either in the purchase process or the distribution process, to say, let's go and enable our customers to go investigate and give them the control to say, do you want to allow this or do you not want to allow this? And if you don't want to allow it, here are some tools to take that ticket and bring it back in-house and be able to distribute it in normal channels, whether it's secondary or primary, right? And so it's having that respect for something that exists, and it's not being it's right or wrong. I don't believe in the and world. I believe in the or world, or I mean the and world, not the or world, right? And so to me, it's how do you create that ecosystem and have that visibility and control that creates trust in what you're doing. And the one thing that I think we see differently is because we have that complete visibility through the life cycle of the ticket before, during, and after, is we know, did the purchasing person actually attend the event?
Right.
And when our customers can see that, they know who the true fan is. It's not a verified fan because a technology says I registered an email. It's no, I'm a real fan because I bought it and I attended. And I think having that ability to really understand that total tour of a ticket with a fan is invaluable to our customers. And that's kind of my perspective on it. And I think it's how do we partner and collaborate with brokers and resale platforms in a way that it provides the fans, the right holders, and those organizations with the visibility and control everybody wants in that.
Yeah, I like the way that you frame that, because it's the I have a long history with the secondary market, and it's the rogue things that happen that I think have created this environment where I think it can be considered some of the actions can be considered destructive. And you were talking about there's a right way, and it's like the NATB has the resale done right idea. And so I think that's good. And then it's the promise of actually knowing who's in the seat. That's the thing that is often missing. And then the big thing about creating trust, because I know that that's one of the things that if you talk to real fans or real customers, so when you go back to like people don't want to change, that's what's been breaking and broken and creates all this frustration, is that fans don't trust the process. It's not so much that they don't trust the secondary market or the primary market, it's that they don't trust either side. It's like they feel like no matter what, if they buy the ticket, what could be the potential downside of it. It's not like they're like going, oh my God, I got this ticket, I'm so excited. They're like going, I got this ticket, I hope that it gets me in, or I hope that there's no problem with it. And it's went from like where it was like sort of like you could be like on, well, the fraud and like all these things are only less than 1%, to like, even if that's still true, in people's minds it's a lot bigger, and perception is reality.
Yeah.
So that rogue element thing I definitely appreciate. And the manipulation of a market, I think, is really dangerous. And like you said with your daughter, it happens in sneakers too, and it's the same people doing that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it is. It's crazy.
Yeah. Your daughter and we could talk about sneakers all day, because I've got like far too many. All right, so then let me go back to the. Oh, go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I think just talking about just two experiences there. So a few years ago, before I was involved in ticketing, although I was involved a little bit in ticketing, my brother phoned me and said, "Can you get some tickets to Justin Bieber in Manchester Arena?" My daughter, so my niece, she was 14, 15 at the time. She was absolutely desperate to go. She wanted 2 tickets for her and her mate, and actually 4 in total, actually, with 2 mums to go also, because they were 14. All right. And they'd been online, and the mum was absolutely ready to pay. I think it was 370 quid. And the daughter, my niece, was going, that's the cost of the ticket. It's 370 quid. I go on Google, and the first thing that comes up, top of the list, ranking was an offer of a ticket, and the offer of the ticket was 370 quid. In my sister-in-law and my niece's mind, Justin Bieber at Manchester Apollo was about 370 quid. The real ticket price was 70 quid. So the challenge with this market is that the consumer, the fan, is starting to believe, if that becomes dominant, that is the true price of what the actual cost of the event is. And in truth, we know that is not the truth. And the person in the music world, because the music world is slightly more complicated, because the rights holder, who is the rights holder in the music world? The artist ultimately has the rights holder, but fundamentally someone's paying the artist to go and tour and underwriting the tour. The venue's underwriting the tour by being the venue and getting a fee, and maybe getting a percentage of the performance of the event in their venue, because they might be sharing some risk. So who ultimately is responsible? Well, it's harder to say. But when you talk to most of our clients, who are the end rights holder and not a third party, they've taken a risk. They're making a real commitment to put on an event, and they're putting that on an event at their cost. And that team or that event, like the Open or whatever it is they've taken all the risk. And ultimately, they want to be in charge of who's buying the ticket. A ticket is not owned by the fan. A ticket is owned by the rights holder, and the fan has a chance to use that to access the venue. That's the way the ticket conditions work on most of these kind of events, especially in the UK and in Europe. And what that means is they can decide whether or not you can buy from them or from other third parties. And if they choose to say that you buy it from our platform, and ultimately, if you don't want the ticket, you can transfer it. If you don't want the ticket, you can resell it, and we'll give you a tool to do that. Then the power is in the fan's hand to decide whether or not they attend the event, or whether or not they transfer a ticket, or, if need be, resell the ticket. And I think it doesn't mean that there isn't a role for third parties. Most of these rights holders, our clients, have decided that there are certain types of audiences, when they segment their market down, that actually they're not the best channel to necessarily sell and to acquire new customers, perhaps, or customers that want different experiences. So they may well have contracted out to a partner to sell hospitality, for example, or premium experiences. They may well have said, you know what, we're not the best at selling. We know we've got demand from overseas, but we're not the best to sell to those overseas customers that might well want to go to, I don't know, a Chelsea football match or to an R&A Open. So we're going to partner with people to do that. But fundamentally, they're in control of that distribution strategy, and that part of that distribution strategy is how to then recycle that if the fan or the organizer or the person wants to can't make it.
Now,
And ultimately, if someone is buying loads of tickets just to resell, then they're a broker. Yes, they're taking an opportunity to work within the lines of a ticket terms and conditions. But if the terms and conditions are clear about that's not available, then actually someone's breaking that. And ultimately, if the fan buys through that process, then they could get let down and they might not be let into the event and they might have to buy another ticket. And then therefore the fan loses. So I think it is a different market. The perception of secondary is different in Europe. I think there is a role for third parties to play a role in distribution and management with specific types of customer base. But when you've got high demand and you've got that's the ones that the third party websites want to be involved with, though, because they know can sell them and then make margin and make money and deliver profit to their shareholders or investors. So
yeah, and to me, it goes back to control, right? And it's flipping the switch to control back to the rights holders, right? And so what I mean by that specifically is if I am the rights holder and I'm responsible for the inventory, I'm in control of what inventory I want to put out to what channels, right? And what that does is a couple things. One is it says I'm limiting the exposure of my true fans to a shared entity, and I'm in control of the data and the insights that come from that. So it only improves your ability to understand your customers and your market channels when you're the one with the first pass at distributing the ticket and understanding the consumer. And the other fascinating part that we've been working on, because the money side of it's real, right, is what's the economics when you put it in-house as opposed to letting it play in distribution and resale channels. To your earlier point, Dave, is you actually make more money when you're in control of how you distribute it and control the fees and control the pricing, and have that ability then to really say, I know for these certain products, categories of seats or events or matches or however you want to look at it, I know I can maximize my yield. And there are techniques and strategies that if you have the right platform, you can put those those strategies in play to drive the yield naturally through best practices and insights, as opposed to letting unnatural forces drive pricing strategies and some of the downside that we're seeing and experiencing with some of the things that are happening when it's just full on automation.
Yeah. And to me, the danger is, again, it goes back to the importance of the brand, right? Because I think one of the challenges I try to get people to, or one of the things, opportunities, I think is a better way of looking at it, is that I try to present people with is the realization that your brand is the most important asset that you have. And it's like if you're a team, 30 to 40% of that valuation that somebody have come along to buy your team from you is paying for is the brand. So if you don't control that relationship, then rogue elements, right? Activities that don't enforce the brand attributes that you want enhanced, they can tear it down really quickly. And that's kind of where with the secondary market today, at least in the way it is in the States, that's always my concern is, like, to David's point with Justin Bieber, people think that, like, a Justin Bieber concert's not for me because it's 400 pounds a ticket, right? That's just to get in the door. Well, then I can't reasonably justify that. And at the same time, if you go to StubHub or any of those platforms, they do a really great job of transactions like Michael was talking about before. But then the thing is if all the tickets are at $1, right, that undermines the brand because then it tells you there's no value. And the thing about it is like if you're managing your brand and you're doing your marketing well and you have a strategy, then there's value in the experience, even if the team maybe not that great, or even in these cases. And it's a process of really like not commoditizing the ticket, but investing in equity and power into that brand and that experience to make it seem valuable, because again, these are once in a lifetime things is what I tell people, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is. It's going to be the one and only time it's ever going to happen in anybody's lifetime, because you're never going to have that same group of people in that same place at that same time together. It's a once in a lifetime experience, no matter what it is. And there's value in that.
So, great.
I think if I go to your point around brand there, it's quite interesting. So, as I say, my background is not really ticketing or technology, but I've spent 8 years as commercial director of Visit London, London's marketing agency. And we work with partners to do marketing all over the world. We work with, airlines to hotel groups to travel operators to create campaigns in the States, Europe and farther afield. And we were very careful about who we worked with, and it wasn't always about premium or cheap. It was about the messaging and about how they were positioning us and how we were positioning them. Because you can't do it on your own. You need partners to work with, because fundamentally, we may have had a view and a hold on the brand that was London, but fundamentally there was lots of different ways to access London, and you just spent some time there, both of you. And I think one of the customers or the interesting brands that came to us and said, we want to work with you because we bring, X million people into London every year, was Ryanair. And this was at the time that Ryanair was going through some quite interesting challenges as a business. But fundamentally, that they were of the view, because we bring, millions of people to London, London should be paying us to market with us and to supplement our marketing as Ryanair. Why don't you pay us to do marketing with Ryanair, because we bring you millions of customers anyway? And we said, well, that's true, but you're also selling a trip to an amazing destination called London, and that's why people want to attend and buy your flights. So I'm not sure that we should pay you a figure. And secondly, realistically, actually, when you're selling London, most of the time you're selling a discounted seat or a very cheap offer, and there's nothing wrong with that. But actually, we believe London has value, and London adds value to a really great trip and a really great experience. And your messaging is probably not for us. Now, I wouldn't necessarily have said that outside these four walls, or in 3 here now, but that's the truth. And you've got to be very careful about who you work with and what value or damage they're going to create for your brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's like really like again. I'm going to just clip this because that's really that's the bulk of the executive MBA class I teach, right? Is like you do things that add value, be careful about the things that can subtract value. Don't take everything at face value. You have to make the right decision for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where the power of personalization is rising all boats that take that on, right? And having the ability to personalize a ticket with additive elements and price them at a way that still creates that value that you're looking for and the fans looking for. It's a win-win. I mean, my daughter is so elated with her shoes when she gets them. It's like Christmas every time she gets that box, right? And it's like, I'm like, yeah. you do know daughter. That's just a shoe.
I don't care. I'm still with her.
Then she yells at me because I don't put a crease guard or something, and I crease my shoes. She's like, how can you crease your shoes? I'm like, because they're a shoe.
Yeah, well, there's also that. All right. So we covered quite a lot of ground here, and I realize like now we're probably going to the point where it's going to get a little long for people. But to close out, right? Opportunities. I kind of started out looking, talking about where technology is and where it can take us. What's one opportunity or one change, because I brought up change or opportunity that both of you are looking at or paying attention to or see coming down the pike right now?
I'll let David go
David
first.
doesn't want to go first on this one. He wants to
All right, fine.
Piggyback off of Michael.
Yeah. So I really believe it's the pocket, and I'm going to go back to Steve Jobs and the power that exists in our pockets with our mobile devices is changing the rules every day, and it's a mashup of technologies, experience, and technology all coming together where it is so powerful because it knows me personally, it knows my behaviors. I can store my preferences, and I can streamline my way of working in the world that I live in. And I think we're going to see this transform ticketing in a radical way. And what I mean by that is, imagine a world where I, Michael McDermott, can say, I love the Denver Broncos, the Colorado Avalanche. I live in South Florida, and I have a budget that I want to put towards experiencing those brands when I'm near them and they're happening. And I can just all of a sudden have a notification on my phone that says, hey, Michael, good news. You're in Chicago on a business trip, and the Denver Broncos are playing the Chicago Bears, and there's a ticket for sale for this dollar amount that you authorized, accept yes or no, and it knows my seat preferences along the way, and I just hit yes. And I now get to participate in that world. Or Dave, you gave the example of I tell chatbot, these are the things that I want, and it automatically knows that they exist. And when it shows up, I'm able to have the opportunity to do that. And if it's in my phone and it's with me, and I don't have to log onto a computer and sit at a desk, it's at lunch with my family, and I can go, oh my gosh, look at this. We can all go to this and be able to participate in that. I think that's where we're going. And I think, that's the way we're looking at the world from a technology company, to pioneer that evolution, to really leverage the way we're all working and communicating, and social preferences and personal preferences and device preferences, and being able to bring them all together to say, I get to just be and exist in a world that delivers me the things that I want and enjoy. And I don't know, to me, that's the panacea state that I look forward to seeing transpire in my lifetime in ticketing.
Well, I'm going to take a slightly different view. I think we talked about, being a fan-centric and a client-centric business. Michael articulated there, how could that opportunity and experience change at the end of the day for the end user and the fan? I think what's fascinating from our perspective, as a very much a B2B business, we're a white label business. We're not trying to build our brands to the consumer. Our job is to deliver that fan experience through our clients' brands and our clients' business. And I think what's fascinating now is that this enterprise platform we've created, that predominantly in the past, organizations would have to have a team in the business, a skill set and a knowledge base in the business to operate. We're seeing now the ability for, and Michael referenced it before, the T20 and the Cricket World Cup that happened for the men's in the US and the West Indies. If that event had historically happened in the US in the past, they would have gone through a process to find predominantly a traditional ticketing services provision partner. And that would have come predominantly where you would list the products that are available on a website where there was multiple products available, and part of it would have been finding a way to communicate the value of that particular event through a multitude of events appearing on that website. And I think where we are now in the world is that we can use our enterprise platform that's delivering some of these great experiences to deliver some of those one-off and large events. And not only can we use the software, but we've got people to help support those processes. So the reason why the T20 was a success was twofold. One, we had a platform and technology that was very flexible and able to manage complex processes with things like the secondary market and with new venues that didn't exist 2 weeks, 3 weeks before, that were brand new and were really flexible to change quickly, manage quotas, inventory really fast, be able to turn things around. But fundamentally, also, we had the people to be able to do that and deliver that with our client. And historically, wouldn't have used that kind of platform to do that. And I think that's the really exciting thing now. We'll be able to take this solution and do things that have never been done in the past for events that, probably thought it wasn't available to them. And now we want to make that available to clients around the world to do these types of events. And to me, that's an opportunity as well.
Yeah, and I'll put maybe a period at the end of that statement. The power of collaboration really is what enables that. And in that T20 example, we had some resources on our team that had great tournament experience and how to leverage the platform to do that. T20 partnered with a company called TEG, and they had strategists that have been using all sorts of ticketing platforms. And the comment that they made post tournament was, for the first time, they had a technology to use and manage across all distribution channels, strategies that they weren't able to do before. To David's point, which is, it's not just chucking up a ticket, it's how do you package and price and distribute those specific ticket types and categories in the right way to get people to come in and participate in all the events, not just one event. And I think if you can't collaborate and you create these rules where you force people into restrictive agreements, where you say you can only use me as a technology, and that's from a position of fear as opposed to a position of confidence. And I think that's part of, I think, what our secret sauce to driving change in the world of ticketing.
Awesome. Well, where can people find both of you on the internet? And I'll let Michael go first, since David always wants to go second on these answers. So,
which is fascinating, because in our business meetings, he always goes first, and I have to follow him. So appreciate that, Dave.
I like to switch it up a little bit.
Yeah, so you can find us at Secutix.com and find some direct connections there. You can also find me on LinkedIn very easily. It's Michael McDermott and Secutix, and you'll be able to find me very quickly. And at any point in time, feel free to reach out directly. It's a super simple email. It's first name last name at Secutix.com. So Michael McDermott, spelled McDermott, at Secutix.com.
And mine is david.hornby at Secutix.com. Hornby as in train sets, for anyone knows the old world of train sets. And I'm on LinkedIn also, and love to talk to people. I think this is a fascinating conversation. Really enjoy talking to you, Dave. But actually, more importantly, it's a fascinating conversation to have with people who aren't our clients, people who are interested. And as Michael says, we don't do this on our own. We do it with partners. Every example we have of our growth has always had another partner involved, normally, in the success of it. I don't care whether that's Salesforce or an access control partner to a data analytics partner. There's always a team effect in this, and I think that's what's really powerful about not only our team. We come from lots of different backgrounds with lots of different skill sets, but also our platform that's open and just wants to work with other partners.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
All right. I hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Michael and David. Let me know. Send me an email at my name, dave@davewakeman.com. As I told you at the start of the program, I have been doing a lot of research to make sure that the podcast and newsletter continue to be valuable for people. Still give you solutions and ideas that will help your business. Let me know what you're thinking and what you have been paying attention to by sending me an email at my name, davidwakeman.com, and tell me, what are you looking for? What are you thinking about? What do you like? What are you struggling with? What would you like to learn more about? Right? It helps me make the podcast more valuable, more beneficial to you. It also helps me do that with the newsletter as well, because if you've noticed the newsletter, I've been working in questions from readers or listeners to the podcast, and I've been using those as a way to make the podcast speak directly to you a little bit better. Hopefully that's working for people. Like I said, also check out my website, davewakeman.com. I've taken those 5 sort of big topics right now that have kind of bubbled up to the top in my list of from my research, what direction we're heading in, how to reinvigorate our sales team, how do we set our right price, what do we do to launch our products and services more effectively, and how do we build better products for our customers. I turned them into like a little mini virtual workshop series, which you can find on my website in the shop. Hopefully check that out. There's some cool stuff there. I'm going to add some things because part of the research is make sure I'm just relevant to you. So thanks for checking that out. I'll be in New York on September 4th doing the Fans for Life workshop. You can find that on my website as well, and it's davewakeman.com. As always, I want to thank you for being here. Make sure that if you dig the podcast, will you rate it and review it on your favorite podcast platform. Also, if you've made it this far, I know you find the thing valuable. Do me a solid and share this with just one person. It helps the podcast grow. It helps make sure I get great guests like Michael and David. It helps people find out about the podcast. It makes the podcast even more valuable to the community. So thank you for doing that. Until next time, I'll talk to you soon. Take it easy.